Imagine walking onto a dealership lot. You find a brand new electric vehicle you really like, and the dealer tells you there is over $7,000 of literal free incentive money sitting on the hood just waiting for you.
Right.
And instead of signing the paperwork, you shake your head, turn around, and walk away.
Which sounds crazy, but it's happening.
It really is. Welcome back to Auto News Talk. Because if you were watching the automotive industry, you are witnessing an absolutely massive identity crisis. On one side, we have this wild, ambitious future technology, right? Fully electric vehicle fleets, driverless cars, artificial intelligence stepping in to sell them.
And all the shiny new stuff.
Exactly. But all those grand visions are violently colliding with the harsh realities of consumer wallets and some incredibly stubborn, old-school power struggles happening right on the dealership floor. So let's unpack this, because what looks like a simple vehicle market shift is actually completely transforming how cars are built, sold, and managed.
It's a fascinating collision of worlds, honestly. And to give you a mental map of the train we're walking through here, we aren't just looking at random, disconnected industry updates. We are tracking a very specific chain reaction.
A chain reaction, I like that.
Yeah, I mean, it starts all the way at the top, right?
Mm-hmm.
With the automakers scrambling to adjust those grand visions you just mentioned. And from there, the chaos trickles down to the changing prices and the swelling inventory on the physical dealership lot.
And then it eventually hits the people.
Exactly. Ultimately, that pressure hits the hidden human drama happening inside the dealerships themselves.
So it's essentially a massive domino effect.
Yes.
Let's start with that first domino right at the automaker level. There is this great recalibration happening in the showroom. Automakers are slamming the brakes on their long-term EV goals because their legacy gas-powered models are dying out faster than the new EV replacements can actually catch on with buyers.
Which is a terrifying spot for an automaker to be in.
It really is. It feels a bit like, throwing away your old reliable pair of winter boots before the new pair's even shipped. I mean, are automakers getting trapped in this awkward middle phase of a transition?
They absolutely are. And you can see the mechanics of this playing out perfectly in the life cycle of one specific vehicle. If you look at a report covering Nissan's product pipeline, they are officially ending the run of the Altima.
Oh, wow. The Altima.
Yeah. Now, this is a mid-sized sedan that has been an absolute staple in the market. But the problem is, the current generation went 8 full years without a redesign.
8 years? I mean, 8 years without a redesign is a complete death sentence in the car business. Consumer tastes change in a matter of months, so leaving a car untouched for almost a decade completely explains why sales fell off a cliff.
Right. And that Nissan report notes that Altima sales dropped a staggering 32% in a single reporting period. I mean, they went from over 62,000 units down to just over 42,000.
That is a massive drop.
It's huge. The core takeaway from that Nissan update is that legacy sedans are definitively dying. The electric replacements are being heavily delayed because of slow market adoption.
So what are they doing instead?
Well, Nissan originally planned electric sedan replacements for both the Altima and the Maxima. But those plans are officially on ice until demand rebounds.
Which means they have nothing in that slot.
Right, which will likely push them out to the end of the decade. So in the meantime, they are forced to pivot their focus to the smaller, gas-powered Sentra just to have something to sell. They even killed off the Rogue plug-in hybrid after just one single model year.
Wow, after 1 year. Which paints a very clear picture of an OEM, an original equipment manufacturer, the automakers themselves, caught right between two eras. They're trying to squeeze whatever life is left out of smaller gas cars because taking the total EV leap is just too risky right now.
Yeah, they're hedging their bets.
But hold on, this brings up a huge question that the Nissan source leaves completely hanging. What happens to the massive factory infrastructure and the workforce previously dedicated to churning out these high-volume legacy sedans? You can't just mothball a massive automotive plant for 5 years while you wait for the EV market to mature.
No, you can't. And Nissan is far from the only one making these drastic panic button moves.
Mm-hmm.
The broader picture is even more chaotic. The industry tracking from the Car and Driver News Hub shows that the entire global auto industry is in a state of rapid, chaotic recalibration.
Across the board.
Right. Exactly. Regarding production, pricing, and even fundamental vehicle safety, the moves are sweeping. Volkswagen is looking at potentially cutting its entire global model lineup in half.
In half.
Yes. And Porsche is pivoting to a strategy where they build fewer cars overall, but aim to make substantially more money per vehicle.
And the pure EV brands are clearly feeling the heat, too. I mean, according to that same Car and Driver Hub, Lucid is laying off workers while simultaneously offering 0% financing for 6 years. They're doing that just to move the metal sitting on their lots.
Right, just to get cars out the door.
And then you have these bizarre market anomalies popping up out of nowhere. There is an electric truck from Slate that supposedly starts at $26,400.
That sounds great on paper.
Right. But somehow that price nearly doubles to $48,000 the second you fully option it out. How is a price jump like that even real?
Well, it highlights a total lack of price stability and predictability. The automakers are throwing absolutely everything at the wall right now to find a profitable path forward. Extreme price cuts, delaying models, manipulating option packages.
Just throwing spaghetti at the wall?
Yeah, basically. And it even extends to regulatory shifts. There's one wild detail from that car and driver tracking involving regulators looking toward a bizarre future.
Yeah.
A new federal rule would completely drop the requirement for brake pedals in driverless cars.
Wait, no brake pedals?
Instead of brake pedals.
That is a massive leap of faith for safety regulators. You are taking away the one physical override a human has in a moving vehicle.
That's a huge gamble.
But as wild as that is, that car and driver data leaves me wanting more on the financial side. Like, what we're not getting here, what this doesn't answer, is a look at the specific balance sheets and financial metrics driving those sudden executions of legacy models like the VW Jetta and the Porsche Taycan.
Yeah, the underlying math is hidden.
Exactly. We know the automakers are bleeding, which brings us to the next domino, the consumers. Here's where it gets really interesting. Are consumers actually anti-EV, or are they just anti-expensive cars?
It is almost entirely the latter, and the data is crystal clear on this. The market analysis of EV sales by Cox Automotive shows that new EV growth is stalling purely due to high costs, and that affordability crisis is pushing the market heavily toward the used EV sector.
So they still want the tech, they just want it cheaper.
Exactly. Their data shows new EV sales falling by over 15% from their previous reporting period, dragging new EVs down to just 5.4% of total vehicle sales.
5.4% is a far cry from the electric revolution we were promised. And the inventory is just piling up and collecting dust.
Yeah.
The Cox data points out that new EV inventory has swelled to an 81-day supply.
Which is massive.
It is. That means if an automaker stopped building cars completely, it would still take a dealership almost 3 months to clear their lot. That is terrifying for a dealer paying carrying costs on those vehicles. Automakers are practically begging people to buy these new EVs.
Oh, they definitely are. The numbers on the incentives they're throwing at buyers are staggering. They amount to 13% of the average transaction price. Yeah, that is about $7,290 per vehicle, on average, just to get a buyer to sign the paperwork.
Yet, even with $7,000 of free money on the hood, the average new EV transaction price is still hovering over $56,000. But the plot twist here is what is happening on the secondary market. Used EV sales jumped over 20% year over year.
That is the crucial takeaway from the Cox data. The EV revolution will not be led by early adopters buying $60,000 luxury cars. It will be driven by the secondary market, where used EV prices sit at a much more digestible average of $38,342.
That makes so much more sense for the average buyer.
Right. And interestingly, Rivian has surprisingly moved into the number 2 spot for new EV brands, which shows there is still a ravenous appetite for specific, highly desirable models. But the broader volume, the everyday buyer, is moving to the used lot.
It completely flips the narrative. But wait, if new EVs are languishing on the lot, why are used EV listing prices actually managing to climb?
Yeah.
The Cox data mentions used EV prices are up 7%.
Yeah, they are.
That feels like a massive missing piece of the puzzle. What this doesn't answer is how that happens. You'd think a soft new market would drag the used market down with it.
You would think so, yeah. But it speaks to a fundamental affordability wall. Consumers desperately want the technology, but they have a hard ceiling on what their wallets can endure. So they flood the used market, which drives demand and prices up in that specific sector.
Supply and demand.
Exactly. And this affordability wall is putting immense pressure on the dealerships. They can no longer rely on easy markups and high volume to stay afloat. Margins are tightening to the breaking point, which means they have to plug every single leak in their sales pipelines.
I like to think of the modern dealership like a leaky bucket, right? You can pour all the new EV inventory you want into the top of it, but if the sales process is broken, you lose the customer through the holes in the bottom.
That's a perfect way to look at it.
And since moving physical metal is getting so much harder, dealerships are turning to technology, specifically artificial intelligence, to patch those holes.
Exactly. If we dive into the comprehensive archive from the Dealer Strategy and Market Trends Hub, it becomes obvious that dealerships are rapidly adopting AI and digital tools to combat major operational inefficiencies.
Because they have to.
Because they have to, yeah. Though, as we will see, it brings an entirely new set of compliance risks. The inefficiency on the human side is glaring, honestly. The Strategy Hub notes that dealerships are bleeding potential buyers, losing about 20% of their CRM leads simply because of slow follow-ups.
Let's clarify CRM for a second. That is customer relationship management. It is basically the digital Rolodex of interested buyers who email the dealer or fill out a form online. Losing 20% of those leads is brutal. 1 in 5 shoppers are just walking away because nobody called or texted them back fast enough. So we're seeing a massive shift away from those simple, annoying little chat widgets you see on dealership websites toward fully customizable AI agents that can actually carry a fluent conversation and lock in a physical appointment.
And what is genuinely fascinating is how this technology is entering the business. There is a great quote in that Strategy Hub from Toma CEO Monik Pameka. He noted a real surprise in the showroom regarding AI adoption.
Oh, really? What kind of surprise?
Well, he said, it turns out there's this class of employees we're seeing within the dealership who are really savvy with AI.
So it's not the bosses pushing it.
No, exactly.
Yeah.
This proves the tech adoption is coming from the bottom up.
Yeah.
It is the frontline workers, the younger salespeople, using AI to automate their follow-ups and make their own jobs easier, rather than just executives forcing a new software program from the top down.
The survival of a dealership no longer just depends on having shiny cars parked out front. It depends on how effectively their back-end tech captures and communicates with a digital shopper at, 11 o'clock at night.
Absolutely.
But playing with new technology is not without risk. The same hub highlights that dealers are scrambling to deal with Federal Trade Commission warning letters, and broader financial risks are everywhere. They point out the sudden collapse of Fisker, plummeting from a $2.9 billion valuation straight into bankruptcy.
It's wild. The environment is incredibly volatile. And regarding those FTC warning letters, they are causing widespread anxiety across the industry. The regulatory environment is tightening right alongside the market conditions as the government scrutinizes how AI is used to, quote, prices or collect consumer data.
But here's the thing. The Strategy Hub doesn't actually tell us what is inside those FTC letters.
Right, it's very vague.
It's a frustrating limitation. What this doesn't answer is the specific nature and contents of those letters. Dealers are rushing to audit their practices, but we are left guessing about the actual warnings that have them so spooked. Regardless, the pressure is on. So what does this all mean?
Well, it sets up a major conflict.
Yeah, because we have automakers slashing production, consumers refusing to buy overpriced new cars, and a desperate need for AI to fix dealership efficiency. But all the AI tools and EV strategies in the world mean absolutely nothing if the humans running the business are paralyzed by internal conflict.
Right.
How on earth does a young, tech-savvy successor implement these necessary AI tools when the founding generation refuses to let go of the steering wheel?
That is the final and perhaps the most difficult piece of the puzzle here, the human bottleneck. An analysis focusing on how family dealerships navigate leadership handoffs makes it clear that generational succession requires strict boundaries and written expectations to prevent total business disruption.
Which makes sense. Families are complicated.
Very. Without those boundaries, you get overlapping authority. The staff doesn't know who to listen to, which confuses employees and completely paralyzes the urgent decision-making needed in a highly volatile market.
That analysis features an incredible quote from Hugh Roberts at the Rawls Group. He perfectly describes the danger of succession as a moment when there are 2 and sometimes 3 hands on the baton.
That's a great image.
It really is. You can just picture the exact scenario, right?
Yeah.
A young general manager is trying to install a new AI-driven sales funnel, and the 70-year-old founder steps back onto the floor, hates the software, and tells the sales team to get back on the physical phones.
And Roberts points out that this kind of intervention is highly destructive. Successors must be evaluated by their results, not by whether they blindly follow the old, analog ways of doing things. Because family wealth and legacy are tied up in these businesses, independent advisors are almost always required to separate the heavy family emotions from the stark business realities.
The biggest threat to a dealership's survival through this massive industry transition isn't just high interest rates or EV adoption. It is the failure of the older generation to yield control to the younger, digitally native generation.
Yeah, the human element is usually the hardest part to fix.
Exactly. If you have three hands on the baton, you are going to drop it. But there is a massive blind spot in this succession analysis. What this doesn't answer is how they navigate the legal and financial nightmares, the complex equity structures that legally complicate these family handoffs. It is never as simple as just handing over the keys to the building and walking away.
No, definitely not. The financial entanglements are profound and often take years to untangle. But when you step back and look at all of this information together, a few major themes clearly emerge from the chaos.
Yeah, let's tie this all together.
First, there is a massive reality check happening. Automakers and dealers are being forced to adapt to what the market actually wants, rather than what they hoped it would want. We saw this supported directly by the Nissan Altima cancellation and the broad production cuts tracked by the Car and Driver Hub.
Basically, the dream isn't matching the reality.
Exactly. And the second theme is that affordability is entirely dictating innovation. Expensive new tech is stalling out on the new car lot, which is pushing buyers to the used market and forcing dealers to optimize their back-end operations just to protect their shrinking margins.
Right, and that is supported heavily by the Cox EV sales data and the AI adoption trends we saw in the Dealer Strategy Hub.
Yeah, they're intrinsically linked. And the third theme is the absolute necessity of modern leadership. Navigating AI integration and rapidly changing product lines requires leaders who can break from the past.
Which is hard for a lot of people to do.
It is, but the insights from the family dealership's handoff analysis, combined with the tech focus of the Dealer Strategy Hub, show that holding on to legacy practices is a guaranteed recipe for failure.
But within those themes, we also have some major tensions and contradictions that the industry really has to resolve. First, there is a clear conflict between the original equipment manufacturer's EV goals and the reality of consumer wallets.
That huge disconnect.
Yeah, I mean, the Car and Driver source highlights this push toward an electric, heavily optioned future, but the Cox data completely contradicts that optimism, showing consumers actively retreating from high new EV prices.
There is also a severe tension between generational control and necessary innovation. The family dealership source highlights founders desperately wanting to maintain the old way of doing things. That is in direct conflict with the Dealer Strategy Hub, which proves that survival requires immediate, aggressive adoption of new technology, like AI agents.
You just can't have it both ways.
You can't. You cannot effectively run a modern AI-driven sales funnel if the leadership is stuck in an analog mindset.
If there's one practical takeaway from all of this, it is that the auto industry's real revolution isn't happening under the hood of the car. It is happening in the operations, the back-end tech, and the leadership structures of the dealerships that are actually selling them.
That is the perfect way to frame it. The car business is learning the hard way that you cannot engineer your way out of a human problem, whether that problem is a consumer who simply cannot afford a $60,000 car or a founder who cannot bring themselves to let go of their business.
It always comes back to the people.
Always.
Well, thank you for joining us on this segment of Auto News Talk. As you watch the market shift, keep an eye on your local dealership. The next time you buy a car, the most advanced piece of technology you interact with might not be the vehicle itself, but the invisible AI agent that sold it to you. Keep that in mind the next time you submit your email for a quote.